Welcoming to the show today, Jonathan Alpert. Just a little quick background. I love the Wall Street Journal op-ed column, read it all the time, said that often. And I found Jonathan Alpert's work in there. He wrote some incredible opinion pieces about things you and I are concerned about, the pervasive nature of victim culture, things like that. He has a book out today. It's called Therapy Nation, how therapy's basically become a crutch for a lot of folks in America. He is a psychotherapist. Jonathan Alpert, welcome to the show. So great to have you.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. So I've read your pieces in the Wall Street Journal. I've referenced them on the show multiple times now. I want to get into this whole how, and I don't want to make this a political conversation, but politics are part of it because people are using it as a crutch, I think, for other problems. However, I do want to start with your book, Therapy Nation, and this whole, I think, very dangerous idea of victim culture. In other words, that you as an individual just don't have agency. And there's nothing wrong with, again, I think, discussing your problems with people and finding a solution. However, the whole idea of victim culture, and you deal with this every day, is that you don't really have agency, that there are deep, dark forces that are holding you down. And if that's
right.
what you believe, there's no way to fix it.
Right. And part of the problem with my profession, and I talk about it a lot in Therapy Nation, is therapists are keeping people stuck and they're creating this victimhood mentality. So instead of challenging people, helping them to create a sense of agency, as you indicated, they're just affirming and validating them, and everyone's a victim. And unfortunately, we're seeing this play out in horrific ways, whether it's people attempting to assassinate Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk, or even, in this case is, I think, a perfect example, Luigi Mangione, who felt it was his right, his duty to take out the United Healthcare CEO. He had such grievances and gripes with the insurance company that he felt that it was his right and his duty to do that. So grievance culture is a very, very dangerous thing. And us therapists, we need to stop putting out there what we're putting out there. And we just see it play out in such terrible ways. And I think part of the problem is therapists are afraid to challenge their patients. They just appease them. They will just say, well, of course it's everyone else's fault. It's not your fault. You're perfect the way you are. So it's always the boyfriend's fault, always the manager's fault, always someone else's fault. It's about time that therapists challenge patients and not continue to make everyone feel like a victim.
Jonathan, I think of a scenario earlier in my life. I was in college. I was on my own. I was struggling with money. I was working in a local bagel store. I really hadn't done well. For the first time, I'd gotten a D in a class. Yeah, it was really rough. And I just remember, going in, there was this young man, Anthony, who'd struggled a lot with drugs. He'd moved from Alaska. Long story short, I'm talking to him and I'm complaining and whining. It's over. Life is blah, blah, blah. And I remember him looking at me while he's working the cash register and saying, Dan, I really don't give a shit. Are you going to show up for work tomorrow or not? Or if you're not, I'm just going to have to get a replacement. And I got to tell you, this is now, gosh, I don't know, 30 plus years later. And I still remember that moment because for the first time, and again, I'm not telling you problems and discussing them can't help at times, but excessive complaining, sometimes you need someone in therapy or whatever it is to tell you, maybe it's you and maybe you should figure out a way. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, Dan. And everyone needs a guy like your coworker there at the bagel shop. And a lot of times that should be the therapist to confront you. I've had people who have confronted patients. Let's say they're participating in bad behavior. In my book, I cite one story of a patient who was doing drugs. And I said, look, you really should stop doing these drugs. Long story short, a few weeks later, he fired me. He didn't like the way that I confronted him. He said, well, I've been to so many therapists. I've never had a therapist tell me I should just stop doing drugs. As a therapist, it's my duty. It's my responsibility to call out bad behavior. But therapists have become so soft and they're creating this fragility. And it really extends into dangerous places. And if a therapist only affirms and validates, we're going to see things playing out in very dangerous ways. We see that with the whole trans movement where Therapists will affirm and validate young kids, and well, of course you feel this way, it's okay, instead of challenging them. So we really need to be careful. I heard of a story where someone was in love with his tree in his front yard. So I don't mean he just thought it was a beautiful tree and liked it like that. He actually was in love with it. He would sit with it. He would talk to it. He would even caress this tree. To me, that's sick and pathological behavior. But apparently, the therapist was just validating that and essentially creating this situation where he continued to love this tree at the cost of forming normal, healthy relations with human beings. So
We're
there you
talking to
go. That's
Jonathan.
my profession for you.
Well, listen, having, listen, I always say if you're citing your education, you're probably a moron. So I'm asking for a dispensation on this. But having spent, that was my undergrad was psychology. My graduate degree was in neuropsychology. I'm not
Oh.
unfamiliar with this. Was not in therapy. It was more in the scientific, neuroscience component of it. However, I'm not unfamiliar with the space. Uh, Jonathan Alpert, author of Therapy Nation, for those listening on Apple and Spotify. Jonathan, another thing I try to impart upon my children, to impart upon them individual agency, in other words, you have control over your life, is I say to them often, if they've done something wrong, if you were watching yourself in a movie, would you be proud of the person in the movie? And typically they'll say to me, no, whether if I didn't catch them stealing it, but imagine I did, right? Would you like that? And they said, no, I wouldn't. And I think with this TDS, this Trump derangement syndrome, which people laugh about, but it's a very real thing, how these people, they don't seem, they want this collective guilt. All you Republicans, all you MAGA people are guilty about something. So it's social murder and micro looting and stealing from people is okay. But I think when you say to them, would you be proud of a person outside of those circumstances if you watch them stealing or murdering someone in the street in that movie? The answer is going to obviously be no. This is a really dangerous time if there aren't more people like yourself speaking out, against this collective guilt nonsense.
Right, you raise a good point, and if you ask them to step out of the situation and look at it, they'll say, "Well, of course, murder is not okay. Of course, committing these crimes is not okay." But there's an exception, and I've seen this because I've confronted countless people on it. There's an exception when it comes to Trump. Well, but he's dangerous. He's evil. He's a Nazi. He's going to ruin democracy. So they rationalize this behavior. And I do think it starts with the small things, like you mentioned micro looting. And here in New York City, where I am, I believe you can steal up to $800 worth of product, which to me is much more than micro looting. That's a sizable amount. And I remember the first time that I witnessed that at a Dwayne Reed, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was taught you don't steal anything, even if it's a 5 cent item. You just do not steal. But we have a culture where they think it's okay. We have famous people, AOC, and actors and famous people out there saying, well, these people must be in need. Of course, they need to steal. So we have a real problem with society. And then regarding TDS, I've made it clear that we don't actually have a diagnosis called TDS, but I've also made it crystal clear that a lot of the pathology that I'm seeing with my patients does resemble actual disorders out there. So the obsessiveness around Trump, the fixation, the hyperfixation on Trump, the high anxiety, the way that Trump just dominates all their thinking. I tell the story about how some patients couldn't even relax. They couldn't possibly take a vacation as long as they knew that Trump was in office. The thinking around this is so dangerous. Imagine an 80-year-old telling you that they hope someone gets killed. It's hard to believe, but I've actually heard it from 80-year-olds. I've heard it from 20-year-olds. It's astonishing that people can hate someone so much that they don't even know that they want this person dead. So I try my best as a therapist to challenge that thinking. Sometimes I'm successful, other times they fire me. They're like, I can't see you. You sound like a MAGA therapist. And the truth is, I treat everyone. I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. I'll treat anyone. But we actually have therapists nowadays who refuse to treat someone who is a Trump supporter. And that's a very sorry state of affairs for my profession.
Yeah, you're not kidding. We're talking to
Yeah.
Jonathan Alpert, author of the book out today. Pick it up wherever you get your books. It's called Therapy Nation, and also I highly, highly recommend go to the Wall Street Journal site, put in the search function his name, Jonathan Alpert, Alpert. Read the articles; they are fantastic. There's two or three of them up there. They're very good. You know, I remember reading a book, Jonathan, back in the day. M. Scott Peck, who since passed, wrote the famous Road Less Traveled book. But he wrote another book, doesn't get as much publicity as The Road Less Traveled, which sold tens of millions of copies. It's called People of the Lie. And he was in this psychotherapy space like you were, obviously a very famous author, and would document these cases of these patients who would come in and were just pathologically incapable of telling the truth even to themselves. When you see a patient like that, is that just a diagnosable like sociopathic behavior that it's just you're not going to fix it, like almost like an incurable cancer, or is there a way to break them out of that? Because if there's not, and those people transfer those feelings into the political space, I've got a really bad feeling that political violence is going to become even worse than it is now, when it's already at red line levels.
Yeah, well, I do challenge these people, but a lot of times they're hearing all this messaging from the media, from mainstream media that paints Donald Trump as an evil dictator. So they start to believe that. And the real problem is when that information gets into the head of the wrong person. We saw that play out a few weeks ago at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and we've seen it play out a few other times. If you think back to when Reagan was shot, John Hinckley was truly psychotic. He was actually hearing voices in his head that were telling him to attempt to kill President Reagan. And today, people are hearing voices, but they're not psychotic voices in their head. These are voices from mainstream media, whether it's the Joy Reids out there or Don Lemons out there. They're hearing these voices. They feel that it's their right and their duty and even their responsibility to take action. They feel like they're doing good for society by attempting to take out President Trump. So yeah, no, we should really be concerned. And therapists, I mean, they're hating Trump. They're putting messages out there. I mean, I look at social media. I see what people are putting out there. My colleagues. Georgetown University, I believe the day after Trump won, had an emergency session for students to help them cope with the loss, to help them deal with their mental health. And I do wonder, what if Kamala Harris had won? Would they have extended that same service to students who maybe supported Donald Trump?
Yeah. Talking to Jonathan Alpert, author of the book Therapy Nation. I guess regarding my prior question, where I was going with this is I understand how a person who is some pathological, psychological DSM diagnosable disorder, who's a sociopath, may turn to murder. It happens all the time. We see it with serial
Right.
killers, murderers, gang members, people who just have no sense of empathy, sympathy, anything like that. What worries me is, and I think this is where you were going with that, is the constant, Manichean end of times dystopian talk that President Trump is not just a bad politician, air quotes, but he's on the equivalent of Hitler, who exterminated millions of people. That's a different level. What worries me is when you look at like the White House Correspondents' Dinner, for example, and again, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. He's a suspect, but the suspect in the case, there's a lot of evidence there, no doubt. He doesn't seem like he was living, based on the evidence we have now, the life of a standard sociopath, right? He seems like he was just a regular guy. That's what's got me worried, that this constant pampering and fluffing of the Manichean idea that if this guy got elected again, your kids are going to be put in extermination camps is going to turn even normal people into potential killers.
Yeah, and these people are living amongst us, and we do have to be careful. If you have someone who's expressing hatred towards Trump, you do have to
Right.
gauge, like, well, how serious is this? Like, do you have an actual plan? Do you hate him so much that you're going and getting a gun and you're gonna like plot out some crazy act? I think we have a responsibility because we've seen it can be, the guy, the 20 something who is our neighbor, or someone who's older. We have to be careful. This does not like discriminate against age. I mean, I've seen it with 20-year-olds. I've seen it with older people. So we have to take very seriously this. We have to be hyper vigilant and alert because no longer can we just brush it off as, oh yeah, he doesn't mean anything by that. We have to like actually ask them, well, are you seriously thinking about doing something about this?
Yeah. Talking to Jonathan Alpert, again, author of the book Therapy Nation. Jonathan, your field is, I've not spent nearly the amount of time you have, however, just in school for 6 years and dealing with other people later on in the space, especially in the Secret Service, where we're constantly talking to psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and elsewhere, because we get a lot of people with problems that threaten the president. So we have to speak to the mental health professional about it. It tends to lean left, a little bit liberal. I have to imagine that you speaking out so publicly was not a very popular move in your space. Therefore, this is why I wanted to have you on. Number one, to introduce you to my audience to celebrate the bravery of someone coming out and saying, like, hey, man, maybe we got to give people the Ipecac syrup once in a while and stop giving them like honey. That's going to make it worse. But I have to imagine in your space, you probably get a lot of emails, especially after your Wall Street Journal pieces that are so public, from people probably attacking you and telling you know, you're just wrong. And you
Oh,
need to highlight the dangers of Trump, not talk people off the ledge from this stuff.
yeah, and you're right. And these aren't just everyday people. These are licensed therapists. These are people that we trust to help us deal with our problems. And the hate emails were just astonishing. I mean, probably too much profanity to say on your show, but like F you, I hope you die. I mean, one comes to mind that was a voicemail that was left to me by a psychologist. She said, I hope you die like Charlie Kirk. You're probably effing, effing, effing. I mean, it's just unbelievable the things that people say. And this speaks to the TDS and it proves my point. Like if you have such hatred towards a political figure that you're willing to tell a stranger like me, someone you don't even know, that you hope they die, you're sick. You have serious, profound mental health problems. And sadly, these are my colleagues. You're right. I'm probably one of the lone conservative therapists out there. But there are, I know of a handful, and they're very good therapists, and they do
Small
good
hand.
work. Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting, with Trump, there's so much hatred towards him, and so many of my patients on the left, they want him dead. After Butler, they were so disappointed that the shooter didn't have better aim, et cetera, et cetera. But with my patients on the right, never, ever, ever did I hear them say that they hope Biden gets shot or dies. Never said that they hope Kamala Harris dies. They didn't like these people. They thought they were stupid. They hated them, whatever. But never, ever did they say they hope they get killed. So therein lies the difference. The party that's supposedly all about acceptance and diversity, blah, 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 is not very accepting of people who have different political views. They actually see them as the enemy and they want them dead. So, I think that party needs to reevaluate what they're putting out there.
I couldn't agree with you more. And oh, it's anecdotal, but it is evidence to back up the premise that this is not symmetric on both sides. There was a very liberal journalist, commentator years ago, I don't know, 5 years plus, that went to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, obviously full of conservatives. And she writes in the piece rather openly that I was expecting, middle fingers, be booed, thrown out, maybe even assaulted. And she writes in the piece, maybe it was a he, I forget, it doesn't really matter, but writes in the piece, I was actually stunned. Like people were interested in talking to me, finding out why I thought the things I believed. Again, I'm not telling you, in the, some utopian fallacy that every single person on our side is perfect and beyond reproach. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying as looked at collectively, which the left always prefers to do, ironically, this is not a symmetric problem. You go to a Trump rally as a black man, a Hispanic man, a Jewish man, a Muslim man, I promise you, I will saw off my right arm and send it to you. If you can show me video of tens and hundreds of people cussing you out just because of who you are, it's not going to happen. It's been written about over and over. You will be welcomed with open arms as long as you're not openly hostile to anyone else.
Yeah, no, that's a great story, and I'm not so sure that the liberals would accept a conservative who's just curious about their party or their rally, whatever the case may be. A couple months ago, during one of the No Kings rallies, whatever you want to call them, here in New York, I was walking around sort of after, just looking at the aftermath, and I would see the heaping high piles of all the F Trump signs, and I'm just looking at it in amazement. And this woman came up to me and she's like, "Aren't these great?" And I just kind of paused, looked at her. I'm like, "I don't know. I kind of like some of what Trump's doing." And she turned to me and she said, "Well, fuck you then." And I was like, "Whoa!" Like she doesn't know me at all, and like she
Sorry.
was, felt like she could just scream at me like that. And I mean, I can't imagine ever turning to a stranger and saying
Right.
that. I mean, I'd be afraid they'd have a gun or would kick my ass or whatever. But it's amazing that people feel so empowered and so fueled by their hatred and triggered that they're willing to say that to a perfect stranger. I just walked away. I was absolutely astonished, but not surprised when you think about it. There's such hatred and hostility amongst some of the people on the left. There was actually a study that came out a few weeks ago, and I believe it showed that just over a third of people interviewed believe that political violence is justified in some cases. So, we're in a very, very difficult place when a third of people think violence is okay when it comes to political differences.
Yeah, Jonathan, and this is not hard. I mean, I can't tell you if we put a supercut together of how many times, right, Justin, I've said, spoken out loudly, boldly, vigorously against political violence, it'd be an hour long. I mean, it's just not hard. We air our grievances at the ballot box and on the debate stage. This is not even difficult. It's not difficult to say. There was an attack in San Diego yesterday. It was
Yeah.
against a Muslim center. Horrendous, tragic. I talked about it earlier in the show. Disgusting. Don't do. It's just not hard. I just don't get it. Let me ask you one a final question. I am a big Maha guy. I'm a health hacker. I know this isn't a health hack segment. However, I find, and again, these are just kind of anecdotes from friends of mine. I'm obviously not going to mention any names, but the over medication of our kids with, diagnosed psychiatric, psychological disorders, like the ADHD, which we just called like being a kid, like, oh, he's just a rough and tumble kid. Like, I'm not telling you that doesn't exist, that there probably aren't kids who probably have some kind of gating issue with attention span. But it's like, really? We've got these kids, Jonathan, on these unbelievably powerful stimulants that can be psychologically addictive. I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen to them long term? I got to tell you, from the Maha perspective and just from like a moral perspective, this really disturbs me.
Well, Dan, and it should disturb you. It disturbs me too. We have therapists that are pathologizing ordinary life. Had a bad day? Well, you must be depressed. Having a bad day is absolutely normal and it should be expected. And that's how we build character. That's how we grow as a person. Even a bad week or two is normal, but there's such a rush and a tendency to pathologize these ordinary experiences, rush and get meds. Doctors are quick to give out meds. The ADD that you mentioned, forgetting something, being late to an appointment a few times, being disorganized, that does not mean that you have ADHD. And unfortunately, we have so-called influencers online putting out this garbage. Well, five things to look for that would suggest you have ADHD. We see it with narcissists. We see it with borderline bipolar. We have complete morons on social media putting this stuff out there, and they have millions of followers, and then people start to believe that. And with medication, just like you wouldn't like take an opioid for a paper cut, like you shouldn't be jumping to an antidepressant just because you're having a bad day. But we have doctors that are quick to give this out. We see it with Ozempic. People are taking that like it's nothing without any consideration of the possible side effects. I always say medication will not give you insight and it will not teach you skills and tools to deal with problems. It's not going to give you tools to deal with anxiety or depression. It's just going to numb you up and make you feel better in the moment. But we have a serious, profound problem in our society, and a lot of it does go back to my profession, therapy and therapist. So it's about time we make some changes with that.
And Jonathan, overly medicating people who are dealing with an obstacle in their life steals away from them the opportunity to have dealt with that obstacle and overcome it. I mean, that is what builds the character traits for success in life. I wrote an entire book about things I failed at, not because I was happy about the failure, but because I wouldn't have done the succeeding thing afterwards that was a success. It would never have happened if it wasn't for the preceding failure where I had to dust off. So I just think medicating the heck out of people, and I'm not suggesting a universal solution that these medications at times can't be valuable to people. I mean, you lose a son or a daughter to some tragic event. There may be a day or two after that where that's just overwhelming. I understand. I'm not here to judge. I mean, I went through chemo and was on a lot of these medications myself. However, every small, I have anxiety. Oh, whatever, take a Klonopin or is that that's not going to fix that for you. You have to learn those coping skills.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's such a there's a quick fix culture, and we see it with Ozempic. We see it with so many issues, feeling stressed, pop a pill. Can't achieve an erection, pop a pill. Want to lose weight, pop this pill. There's no agency. People aren't willing to do the hard work like you did to get to where you are today. You do have to fall on your face a few times to build character and to build strength. And there's something to be said for good old-fashioned self-help and really trying to develop strength and autonomy and character that allows people to persevere through difficult times. And honestly, I think we're raising a bunch of wimps. Therapy culture creates fragility and weakness. Blaming everyone else for your problems instead of looking at yourself is not going to get people better. So with therapy, people go in, they vent, they get stuff off their chest, and they feel better in the moment. And then they go back and do it all over again 6 or 7 days later. So it feels good. It's almost like a drug, a medication. But there's a big difference between feeling good in the moment and actually getting better. And when patients see me, I don't want to see them for years and years. I tell them, look, let's set up a plan. Let's figure out how you can get from point A to point B, and let's set some clear goals. But not a lot of therapists are doing that. They have patients that are in there for life. They're seeing them weekly for 5, 10, 20 years. It's absolutely ridiculous. People aren't getting better, yet they keep going back. And I use the metaphor: would you keep going to a hairdresser if you didn't like the haircut that you were getting?
Right.
Probably not. Would you keep going to a fitness trainer if you weren't getting in shape? Probably not. So we should have the same standard when it comes to therapy.
Jonathan Alpert, what a great interview. I was hoping for 15, 20 minutes. I went way over. I said last question probably twice, and I just kept
There's a lot to talk about, Dan.
Well, we'll definitely have you back. I think you're a fascinating guest. I just want to make sure we get a promotion for the book. And again, the book is called Therapy Nation, out today. Pick it up wherever you get your books. The subtitle of the book is How America Got Hooked on Therapy and Why It's Left Us More Anxious and Divided. And again, read his pieces in the Wall Street Journal. They are fantastic. Try any search engine, put his name in, and you'll see the articles pop up. Jonathan, thanks so much. As I said, welcome back anytime, and good luck with the book. It's definitely
Thank you,
needed
Dan.
right
I appreciate it so much. Take care.
You got it.
Thank
That was
you.
Jonathan Alpert, folks. Go pick up the book today. Fascinating interview. Again, I try to keep them to 15 or 20 minutes, but sometimes they just go over. We all needed to hear a little bit of that. Check out Haley coming up at noon, rumble.com/Haley. Check out Vince Colonnese every day, rumble.com/Vince at 8 a.m., 0800 Eastern Time. We really appreciate you supporting their shows. They're fantastic. Please download the Rumble app. It is free. Also, if you could follow us on Apple and Spotify, I know a lot to ask. I just really appreciate it. It's all free. If you want to watch us on the web, we'll do that. Rumble.com/Bongino. You can watch us on your smart TV too. Oh, look at that. 3.64 million followers. Yeah, you were stealing away my other 04 there. So give us a follow while you're there. Rumble.com/Bongino. Check us out on your smart TV too. I will see you back here tomorrow. at 10 a.m.
Hey there, I'm Vince,
I'm Haley Carania,
host of Vince.
host of Scrolling with Haley.
You can always catch my show right here
On the Bongino Report.
live, 8 a.m. Eastern, weekday mornings.
Weekdays at noon. If you miss it, no worries. The show will always be
Right here
and anywhere you find
a podcast.
Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, Haley Carania here, host of Scrolling with Haley. My show is coming up right here on Rumble at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I cover breaking news, react to viral videos, go down conspiracy theory rabbit holes, and have a whole lot of fun. You are not going to want to miss a second of it. Live, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Rumble, rumble.com/Haley. I'll see you there.